So I have more on my report.
Okay, let's keep
Sorry.
carried.
Okay, so facilities updates. Wastewater treatment plant, everybody's favorite. So the designs have been submitted at 90% completion. They've been submitted to the DEP. We are now in a public comment period that is August 16th to September 16th. Once that public comment period has been completed, we should know then if we're signed off and then can proceed to going out to bid. There is a ginormous wiring project at TES that is gonna come in under the wire. We'll see if it's done on the first day of school. They're working really, really hard, but that, if you recall, we received E-rate funds for that in a grant. High school paving, Dave pulled a rabbit out of a hat. We didn't think we were gonna be able to get it done. Some of that was sort of additional items that that you all agreed to put back in the budget at the last minute, and we weren't sure we were gonna be able to contract with any, but the high school project, I think, is completed TPS this morning. I had to drive over the grass to get out because all of a sudden they're tearing up the driveway where we were parked. TPS was the other major one. There is some work at Green, but it's not quite as big a project, I think, as the other two. And then the lighting project is on track, will likely be completed September, October, but it won't disrupt school at all. Boiler project at Green is also on schedule to be completed before heating season begins. Transportation. So we did have one driver resignation, but we did hire 2, so we're 1 up. We still have 3 open driving positions, but we're in better shape than we were last spring. So that allows us to reopen a route in Turner that had been combined. We still have 1 combined route in Leeds and 1 in Green. So each time we hire another driver, we'll be able to split those runs again. The good news is both Pam Miller and Cheyenne Houle, who are the transportation specialists, who last spring were driving full-time, they do not need to drive full-time, so they will be available for call-outs and things like that. So we will be in a better place than we were last spring. And Jim has said he's gonna have bus runs ready for Monday. We get a lot of people register at the last minute, so just names are coming in on a daily basis. So last year he learned the hard way as a brand new transportation director that if you publish those routes too soon, you have to change it 50,000 times. So rather than irritate people, they're gonna get published on Monday. And then for hiring, we do have 22 EdTech openings, which is a bummer. 4 applications came in just in the last week, so interviews have been scheduled. I know Kim won, I know Evan had one, a couple others. We do have multiple subs. A lot of the ed techs at the middle school are actually covered by subs who've been here for a while and they're just working on getting certified. And then we do, Rebecca has contracted 4 ed techs. It costs us more money, but it fills some of those goals. So people are being pretty creative with that. So we have 22 openings, but it doesn't mean we have 22 without people in them. But it's still too many, and I think people are concerned. In terms of positions, we will likely not be able to hire. So we last year added a board certified behavior analyst, BCBA. We have contracted for hours of support in the past. We have not had applications for that, so we will continue to contract. The high school had a late science teacher resignation for July, maybe early July, have not been able to hire for that, so they have changed the schedule to just run the year without that position filled. And then the instructional coach at the middle school, resignation 2 or 3 days ago. We will not fill that. Posting and hiring for that now will be disruptive. So Janet's working on a plan to sort of divide up some duties, but there won't be an instructional coach. And then we have a bunch of new teachers on the consent agenda, so I just want to run through them real quickly. Wendy Dobbin, social worker, this position's been open for 2-3 years, maybe?
Yes, multiple years.
Multiple years this position has been open, so we're super excited. Stacy LeClaire, technology teacher at TES and Leeds. This is the 3rd technology teacher in 3 years, so we're hoping 3 is the charm. She comes to us with experience and having already done this, which is a good sign. Joan Turtelot, guidance counselor at Leeds. This was a position we could not fill last year. Super excited. I think Shannon might have cried tears of joy and relief. Jack Dodd, another one. Oh my gosh, this I say kid, he's first year teacher, music teacher,
College.
like, I will shout out to Shannon and Kim. I think when I realized he was going to another interview the next day, I was like, you guys need to sell how awesome we are, and it worked, because he didn't go where they interviewed him, he came with us, so we're super excited. Wendy Anderson used to be a special ed teacher at Green Central School, left teaching for a couple years, is ready to come back, so she's gonna be at the middle school. Colleen Beam is a social worker who's been working at St. Mary's actually, and she wants to transition into teaching position, and so will be special ed resource room teacher at the high school. Kelly Stratton, this is a position that's been open for 2 years, world language. We have filled our open world language position, it's awesome.
Does she know Latin?
No. That's just not coming back, buddy, I hate to break it to you. She speaks Spanish. Isabel Bassett, she is, was one of our ed techs. She is going to be teaching 6th grade at Green Central School. And Jody Phillips is going to be the kindergarten teacher at Leeds Central School. She was a kindergarten teacher last year in Lisbon. Super excited. She was our very last hire, interviewed her, loved her. She was already setting up her room as things were going on. So feel really good about this group that we hired.
Great. Any questions? Superintendent on her report?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are we missing a school counselor on that list?
No, because Maureen was approved last June.
And so is Dan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry.
Yeah, I actually checked. I actually
you.
went through and made sure,
I
because
saw
I was
Kim's
like,
face
where's the
and I
other
was
guidance
thinking the
counselor?
same thing.
No, she was approved last June. We hired her early enough.
Okay. So all of those instructional nominations that were just read off is actually the extent of our consent agenda as well. So I don't see why we shouldn't just move forward with that motion to approve the consent agenda, which includes item 8.1, instructional nominations, which were just read by the superintendent. Does anyone want to move that?
I did.
Bree, second by Jamie. All those in favor? It's approved unanimously. I mentioned earlier, I might want to move item 10.2 up the agenda. I actually think it would be nice to do that right now. I think it's pretty straightforward and simple. That is the nomination of Tripp Middle School Assistant Principal. Carrie, would you like to say a few things about that?
I'm actually gonna let Janice say it, because
Okay.
Janice here, and it's her person,
Wonderful.
and we love her.
Unfortunately, Amanda is not feeling great, so I told her to go home for the afternoon. But yes, we were fortunate enough to have a fairly strong applicant pool for the assistant principal position. Amanda Gray stood out. She comes with a strong background in math and instructional coaching, specifically in math, which is an area district-wide that we are looking to focus, and not my strength. So it complements sort of the instructional piece that we needed here in the building well. She comes from the Lake Region area, but has experience in Massachusetts and Colorado as well. She has hit the ground running and is doing a fantastic job the last couple weeks that we've been working together, so I feel fortunate for that.
Great. We should probably turn that into a motion, though. A motion to approve the nomination of Tripp Middle School Assistant Principal. Anyone want to make that motion? So moved.
Second.
Okay, and seconded by Kyle. Any further?
Did Anthony?
Anthony got it, yeah, Anthony got it.
I never know, you guys don't.
Anthony
Feels so
got it.
supported, guys.
Gotta have fun doing it, right?
Any further discussion or questions or anything from the board? Sounds like we're pretty happy with hires this year, so that's very good to hear.
Filled some really hard to fill positions, so like, those are wins.
Yeah. Seeing no further discussion, I guess we'll move to a vote. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. And now, we will go to old business and continue our annual organizational meeting items from August 8th. In the back of your packet, I put together a list of 16 motions here that I think we should go through here as part of our organization. I think some of them can be pretty quick, but you know, we certainly went through what we typically go through at organizational meetings at our last meeting, and we didn't quite get through things. So hopefully we'll be able to speak to. I've certainly gone back through and reviewed our policies much more closely, and I think this reflects appropriate organizational action. So we'll just start with the first one, and that is a motion to affirm that the membership of the Finance Committee shall consist of 3 members. Does anyone want to second that? Okay, Bree, seconding that. Anyone want to have conversation around this item? I'll add that in our policy, we regularly are referencing 3 members on Finance Committee. It seems appropriate, but at the same time, we are allowed to change membership committee makeup at any time throughout the year just by a simple vote. And just as we are organizing, I think it's good to just revisit that and reaffirm that before we move forward. So, any more discussion on Finance Committee being 3 members? Seeing none. All those in favor? Great. I'm going to follow up with a motion to charge the Finance Committee with the following purpose and responsibility, and that is to review financial matters before the board in accordance with Maine Statute, MRS Title 20A 1001. This includes the review of income and expenditures, insurance, and employee benefits. The committee is also authorized to sign warrants as well as to discuss general financial issues with the administration. Anyone want to second that? Kyle. In reviewing policy, not only do we set the number, the standing committees, which we approved a group of standing committees on August 8th, we also confirm their membership amounts, so we just put 3 people on Finance Committee. We also are to set a charge, purpose, and responsibility. We've apparently been operating for decades, just kind of intuiting that the Finance Committee does financial things, right?
Absolutely.
But we've never actually put it into words. So here we are, largely leaning on Maine Statute 20A 1001. If you look up what that is the law that assigns the school board its duties and powers. And so we're essentially transferring our financial duties and powers that are granted to the school board to the Finance Subcommittee. Or committee, I should say. We say subcommittee quite a bit. This is actually something I get frustrated about. We say subcommittee quite a bit. It's committee. It's Finance Committee. Peter?
I just want to clarify with Gabby, this wouldn't, I'm not seeing just a general statement in there, this wouldn't limit any of the things you feel we might need to discuss, or should we have a sentence that says, this includes but not limited to
I
kind
don't
of deal?
think it limits anything personally.
Okay.
I also want to add this. I just sent these statements to everyone today. I'm purposely listing out as a separate motion here because I don't have any issue with postponing a decision on this until next meeting. So we have a couple weeks to really make sure we like this language. We can revisit it in a couple of weeks if folks would like as
I
well.
just will have a general, going through it, my only general thing is to make sure that none of our directing statements
Yeah.
limit the committee in any fashion, because sometimes we can't always think about what we need to address in the policy. Well, maybe we're not supposed to direct it and so forth.
I
So
think-
that's my only concern, is to make sure that none of these statements in any way limit the subcommittee's ability to make suggestions.
Sure. Hang on, I'm prepared to move to postpone the decision on this till later if folks want to decide on that, so, or someone else can make that motion now, I think, if they'd like, just to move to postpone a vote on this matter until the next meeting. Jamie's making that motion?
I am. I
Yeah.
just, and to clarify why, I'm just reading through them real quick, and I noticed that like on the policy committee one, the last line is, all policy recommendations shall be brought to the board for consideration, and
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if that should be something that is on each charge.
I very much think we should be very thoughtful,
Yeah.
and everyone should review this and make sure we're all in agreement on what these charges are. So I'm very supportive of postponing this, an action on this for another meeting so we can have time. So Jamie just made a motion.
Is it to table?
No,
No.
just to
You can
post-
table to a specific date.
You can,
May I make a suggestion? You
Go
made
ahead.
the motion, who seconded it?
Kyle.
Kyle.
If Kyle withdraws his second, withdraw your motion, then we can just deal with these at another time.
Yeah, but I think I want to be able to talk about them right now, too, so.
Well, just at this point, if you wanted to, but whatever.
I
I mean,
think,
I can change my
no,
motion
I
if you.
like your motion to table till next,
And I can change mine if you
we'll
want.
table it till next meeting, it's all right.
So promotions are flying.
Anyone want to second Jamie's motion to postpone a decision on this till next meeting?
Second that.
Kyle, any more discussion on that?
Are we tabling all 16?
No,
Or
all
just-
two.
or just two?
Just
Just
the
number
current
two.
motion,
Number
we're just
two.
tabling two.
So we have time to.
Okay, good.
Just the charge of the finance committee
Okay.
at this point. And we'll likely postpone charges on all of them, but I think it's good to bring them up so we can talk here. So, all those in favor of postponing to the next meeting? That would be unanimous. Move on to number 3. And this is a motion to rescind the appointment of Crystal Barris to the Finance Committee. Any motions to rescind a prior action requires a 2/3 vote. I'll make the motion. Would someone like to second it? Bree. Okay. In speaking with Crystal, she actually is not interested in being on the Finance Committee. And I think there are other changes here to come, but we voted her by paper ballot, which is a pretty affirmative appointment. We take a 2/3 vote to remove her. Does anyone have any more discussion around that before we move to a vote? Seeing none, all those in favor? That is unanimous, so we passed the 2/3 mark. Crystal is rescinded from the Finance Committee. So now we have a vacancy on the Finance Committee, so we will open up nominations for positions. And I'll start right off with nominating Peter Ricker.
Second.
I second that.
Okay.
I think she got it.
Okay, Jamie gets the second. Any further nominations for the Finance Committee? Okay. Seeing none, we will move to a ballot vote. Yes?
I think you need to have a motion to cease nominations.
Oh, sure.
Am
So
I
moved.
following along here?
Second.
So that was
Well,
Anthony.
Anthony moved,
Peter.
Peter seconded.
Okay.
All those in favor of ceasing nominations?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Teresa.
Yes.
I'm just trying.
No, very
You're
good.
on it.
Very good.
It says chair on it, ignore that.
Right, it's number 3.
It's just how they're all printed. This is number 3, yeah, if you wanna mark
You can
it,
fight
this would be
over it
number
later.
The
3.
first one's the only one that matters.
Exactly.
I still refuse to sign my name.
It is a strange thing, isn't it?
I signed it for you, Peter.
Well, that's, you know,
Okay, so, did you also write your name so it was illegible?
that's my signature.
Because, I don't know, if you gotta, if it's not readable, you
Thank
probably
you,
should
sorry.
sign your name.
You get some more ballots, sorry, I was slow on the take here.
I'll just sign it.
It's unanimous.
All right, Peter, congratulations. You're on the Finance Committee.
Good job, Peter.
Right. So,
Touch and go.
all right, so the next motion I'd like to make is to affirm the membership of the Policy Committee shall consist of 3 members. Anyone like to second that?
Second.
Okay, Bree. Any discussion around this item? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? It's unanimous. The next announcement I would like to make is about modifications to Policy Committee membership. Now, I think there was some confusion, and unfortunately, I think it was one of the reasons why things got so confusing at our last meeting, is because the motions to appoint members started getting modified and what have you, and it got confusing. So that was a tradition we had with the chair, even though the chair is by policy given the power to appoint to these boards, we'd still put it forward. I don't think that makes sense anymore. And so I'm simply going to announce the appointments now. And so for the Policy Committee, we just affirmed 3 members. In speaking with Bree, she has volunteered to step away from the Policy Committee, and so that Crystal can take her place. So our Policy Committee is going to consist of our chair, which was voted tonight, of Jamie, Anthony, and Crystal Barris moving forward. Any questions around that?
Just a comment,
Yes.
really, that before this term, Crystal was on policy committee, correct?
Yes, she's been on it before.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so similar to Finance Committee, I'm gonna make a motion to charge the Policy Committee with the following purpose and responsibility. And that is to review policy-related matters before the board in accordance with Maine Statute, MRS Title 20A 1001, as well as MSAD52 Policy BG and Policy BGR. This includes the research of timely topics, the review of existing policies on a regular basis, drafting proposals for new or amended policies, and the recommendation to eliminate existing policies. All policy recommendations, new, amended, eliminations, or otherwise, shall be brought to the board for consideration. And I did note that typo, so it's good that we can update. Is there a second to that motion? Kyle, any discussion around this? Again, it's fresh in front of everybody. I'll say largely, some of this language came from other districts that have specific policy committees that have a charge right on their website, and which we don't have, but as well as, again, leaning on the Maine statute for school board authority. If no one has any thoughts now, I think it's appropriate to motion to postpone action on this to the next meeting, if someone wants to make that motion. Kyle?
I'll second.
Seconded by Jamie. Any more discussion there? Seeing none, all those in favor? That is unanimous. Moving on to, on August 8th, you may recall that we tabled a motion. So this will be a motion to take that back off the table, which is the motion from our August 8th, 2024 meeting to appoint Brianna Allard, Ashley Mishu, and Peter Ricker to the Curriculum Committee, and as it was amended, to add a fourth member to the Curriculum Committee. Is there a second for that motion? No, three, okay. Like I said, the motion to appoint started getting confusing in that conversation. We have some amendments there. We've tabled it to hear. What I would like to do, frankly, is to continue the pattern that you've seen on these other motions, and simply, I think, voting this motion down, and then making motions that separate these things apart and consider them individually moving forward with the Curriculum Committee. So that's my suggestion here, is that we take a vote it down. We'll come up with a separate motion for the number of members on the committee, a separate motion, and then there'll be a separate announcement of appointments and what have you. Is what I suggest. Any other discussion?
I
Gary?
just need to clarify.
Yes.
So the motion was to put it back on, to like take it off the table.
Take it off the table, correct.
So now is it a separate motion to, no?
The
Okay.
motion is back on the table,
Okay.
and we're into discussion. And so there was an amendment made at the last meeting. That amendment was
Oh, okay.
approved.
Yeah.
Okay, and we're now in discussion.
Got
The
it.
main motion, which, I'll repeat it, was to appoint Brianna Allard, Ashley Mishu, and Peter Ricker to the Curriculum Committee, and add a fourth member to the Curriculum Committee. That's the motion on the table right now. Again, my suggestion, like I said, is to vote this motion down, and then we'll split it apart and consider these things individually. Any more discussion on that? Please feel free to ask.
I'm just feeling a little confused. Are we on 8 or 9?
We are on 8, okay? We are on 8.
That's what I thought.
And again, my recommendation here is that we vote this motion down, and then we'll move on to 9, which will be to make motions that are individual, that will then address the Curriculum Committee, make up the membership. Go ahead.
To clarify, so you're recommending that we vote that this ought not pass?
Yes. Will we put this number 8 to a vote? My suggestion is we just all say no, and then we'll make motions that will then address these things in an organized way, just like we've been dealing with the other committees here tonight. Yes, go ahead.
I think that seems unnecessarily formal. unless there's a desire to not appoint these people, the board was supportive of the addition of a fourth member, and so I urge, and that, you know, it could be a point of information. Are you thinking of changing the construction of the board, the makeup of the board? Not the board, the committee?
Well, again, the motion by its nature is somewhat contradictory. There's 3 nominations for the board, and we said we want 4 members on it. So something needs to be different, and my suggestion is we break that up, and we turn that back into a discussion around how many members should be on the board, and then we'll move to appointments based on that number.
Okay.
Okay. Any further discussion? Yes, Anthony?
If I may, so I don't think that it's contradictory, it's simply saying these people are the ones that will be appointed. You have the authority to appoint the fourth, and so I'm gonna urge people to continue to vote, to support the motion on the table, but not on the table, but before the board.
Yes.
So to clarify, the motion was made and passed to change the committee from 3 to 4.
It was an amendment to the motion on the floor. So there was an amendment.
So the amendment,
The motion was
The
to
amendment
appoint
was
so many
made.
members.
yeah,
Yes.
but the amendment was made
Yeah.
and the amendment was passed.
Yes. To the
And
motion
you're
that's
saying
there
that
on
was
the
a
floor.
bigger part of the motion. Okay, so that wasn't a separate motion, that was an amendment?
No, that was an amendment to the motion under discussion. So it was, the motion was to appoint Bree and Ashley and Peter to the committee.
Yeah, and then
And
amendment was
amendment
made,
was, a proposal was made to amend that motion to, let's add a 4th person.
without any name directly
without
given
any
to
name
it.
given to it. And then that was tabled.
Well, no, that passed,
The amendment passed.
the amendment passed.
For the rest.
So, and the motion, but it
But then
doesn't-
the motion was
itself was
tabled.
not passed, so that's not official yet. We're
Okay.
still in discussion about it, and that was tabled till today, and here we are. And now, I'm suggesting we just,
You want to, okay, so at
Vote
which
this
point we're now
motion.
voting on the motion, which includes a 4th member
Correct.
and only 3 appointed, but if we vote it down,
then
then I
we'll,
suspect the next one is to reaffirm it as 3.
that would be the case, yes, so we could
Okay.
move it to 4.
I just wanted to make sure
Say
that
so, yeah.
I'm putting it all in.
Yeah, the next motion would be to focus specifically on just how many
So
members.
this basically clears it up and then we can start fresh.
Correct,
Yeah.
Okay.
correct. Any more discussion? Seeing none, we'll take a vote on the motion. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand.
Oh, sorry. That's opposed.
Anthony,
I get
all those
confused.
opposed? That is, and we're gonna have someone abstain? Okay, so Kyle's abstaining. Can you record that vote? All right. So that motion did not pass. So I will put out a motion now that the membership of the curriculum committee shall consist of 3 members. Is there a second for that? Jane, discussion.
I'm sorry, I think the amendment, or the motion is, no, never mind, I'm sorry. No,
I think
no.
if you'd like to amend this to include 4 members now, I think you can feel free, Anthony. But the motion on the floor under discussion is a motion for the curriculum committee to be composed of 3 members. Is there any more discussion around that? Yes?
I will move to amend to include a 4th member.
Okay, is there a second there? Okay, there's no second on that amendment. Any further discussion around the curriculum committee being composed of 3 members? Go ahead.
I get nervous about the idea of adding more people because we are a small enough board in general. So I feel like we're already going to be really asking people to stretch themselves thin. And I think that, I know, based on our previous meeting, we have some work to do as a board. and stretching ourselves thin by putting more people onto committees, asking them to come early for the extra meetings every single week, if you, just depending on, and we're gonna be limited because some of these meetings are at the same exact time, so it's gonna be limited with who can, and I just think there's other things this board really needs to focus on in order to do the good work that we set out to do with the goals and strategic plans, and I don't like the idea of adding more people to committees and stretching people's time and energies and brain capacity too thin to not do well quality work.
I assume that was supported with 3 members?
Yes.
Very good, okay. Anyone else? Okay. All those in favor of the motion? No opposed? Is there an abstention? And Kyle abstained. So that passes of 3. Members, I'll announce of the curriculum committee will be Brie Allard, Ashley Michu, and Peter Ricker. Moving on to number 11. That will be a motion to charge the curriculum committee with the following purpose and responsibility, and that is to review curriculum-related matters before the board in accordance with Maine Statute MRS Title 20A 1001, as well as MSAD52 Policy IGA and Policy IJJC. This includes taking a leadership role in the establishment and evaluation of the educational direction of the school unit through the review and administration recommendations, educational materials, and courses of study. All curriculum recommendations shall be brought to the board for consideration. Any initial thoughts around this?
Wait, did we have a second?
Oh, sorry, yeah, is there a second to that motion? Yeah, Kyle, sorry. Anyone with initial thoughts on this now?
I mean, my
Yeah.
only thought is the same as I said earlier, which is I would just like to see that last sentence throughout all
All
of
of
them.
them, yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
so I would like to make,
I think we'll find there are some things that finance does, like signing warrants and things that don't always come to the full board. But I think we'll take that, I think we can work on that between now and the next meeting.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, that makes sense, I just
Yeah.
want time to mull it over and think
Right,
about it.
no, it's exactly right. I
Yeah.
think we should take time, so anyone want to make a motion to postpone action on this to the next meeting?
So moved.
Jamie, seconded by Kyle. All those in favor? That's unanimous. All right, item 12 is a motion to affirm that the membership of the Plant, Transportation, and Building Committee shall consist of 3 members. Anyone want to second that motion? I'll make it. Anyone want to second?
Yep.
Bree? Any discussion around 3 members on PTV? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's unanimous. I will make a formal announcement that our PTV committee shall be Kyle, Alex, and Anthony. Moving on to our next motion, number 14. The motion to charge the Plant, Transportation, and Building Committee with the following purpose and responsibility. It sounds very similar, but is to review the management and provide for the custody and care of school property, transportation, and facilities in accordance with Maine Statute MRS Title 20A 1001. This includes coordination with administration on current transportation and facility issues, as well as the development of a long-range plan for facilities, grounds, transportation, and capital needs. Is there a second? Kyle? Any initial thoughts there? Okay, I think we'll just move this one forward. I'd like to make a motion to postpone action on this item to our next meeting. Kyle?
Second.
Seconded by Anthony. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Okay. Number 15, a motion to establish a standing negotiations committee, which shall consist of 3 members who shall be appointed by the chair at a later date as needed.
Second.
Seconded by Bree. Just to start the discussion here, we don't anticipate any new big contract negotiations this year. If something does come up that is contractual related, that we do need our negotiations committee, we like the flexibility to be able to quickly appoint members and act on it. And we also should make it so we can actually assign them a charge, so we know what that committee is supposed to do, which will be the next motion. So this one's a little bit different in the fact that we're not going to make appointments right now. We'll only make appointments to that subcommittee as needed at a later date, if the need arises. Any more discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? It's unanimous. I will get through our last organizational motion here, which is number 16, our motion to charge the negotiations committee with the following purpose and responsibility. That is to review and negotiate employment contracts before the board in accordance with Maine Statute, MRS Title 28-1001. This includes the need to meet and discuss employment issues with members of the administration and to negotiate collective bargaining agreements. So it's largely what has been going on, but we're putting it into words. Please keep looking at these, and we'll try to talk about them again next meeting. Let's make a motion here to, postpone action on this to the next meeting. Anthony, Kyle is a second. All those in favor? It's unanimous.
Can I just ask
Please.
who seconded your initial motion?
I did.
Oh, thank you, Bree.
Yeah,
Sorry I missed that.
no problem, no problem.
Did you
All
get
right.
those comments?
Yeah.
So we are through our organizational meeting for now, and we're going to move on to a presentation on the strategic plan progress.
God, this
by
is so
Superintendent
exciting.
Bennett. Here we go.
So exciting.
Here we go.
Do you want me to sing?
Please dance
You
too.
missed it
Well, I'm not
earlier.
asking you to dance.
I would like you to say, so I didn't get to see
Okay.
it.
So I gave you, I sent you a copy, sorry, it's here, so you're gonna have to just turn and I'm gonna try not to block anything. So I emailed a copy to you all, sort of just electronically to be able to look at, there's a lot here. But I feel really good about sort of the gathering of information. And the principals and assistant principals worked really hard on this as part of one of our days this summer, putting together things that we had accomplished, but then things that we still need to work on. And then Teresa and I spent several hours. And then we'll give a shout out to Teresa for figuring out how to visually make this look so it didn't overwhelm. It's still a lot, but the plan is a lot. So, just stop me at any point, ask a question, right? Because I'm just gonna talk, and then if I say something you don't understand or you wanna know more about, please just interrupt. Just gonna remind us of the vision, mission and vision for this plan. We did not adjust this when we did this rewriting last winter and approved it in January. So the mission of this school community is to provide excellence in education. Students will become responsible citizens and lifelong learners as a result of the teaching and learning in safe, respectful environments. So the vision is what really informed all of the objectives and goals that we have, okay? So we want collaborative teacher teams focused on student-centered instruction to ensure increased learning for all, continuous improvement and research-based decision-making. And actually, what I'm excited about is this research-based piece that actually is language that is new in IJJC that was not there. So, which I think is really, really important. Pre-K through 12, essential knowledge, skills, and proficiency levels are defined, are identified. Individual student achievement of learning standards is closely monitored using varied assessments. Students needing extra help will have more time and support to meet their learning standards. And student achievement data is used to evaluate the effectiveness of programming instruction. I really feel still good about that vision and feel like the work that we did in setting up our goals really aligns with that. So the very first goal, and the color is different on this TV, so I don't know, it's supposed to be this really nice blue, green. Well, from over here, it looks like blue, weird. Okay, so first goal, climate and support. If you remember, this goal didn't change. The big goal did not change last year. We felt that those were still, when the committee and then brought to the board, still felt that those were the right big goals. The objectives is where we did some work. So objective 1 has to do with developing a comprehensive, proactive, multi-tiered system of support. That's a mouthful, that's teacher speak. It is making sure that all kids get what they need, whether it's academic or behavior. It's that systems of support that we need to provide across the district. So, this has been reorganized a little bit. The language hasn't changed. Right here is the list of strategies that we made last winter and agreed upon in January. And these are the strategies that have guided the work that we've done since then. And then this over here, and this is all Teresa's mind meld amazingness. Over here is what we've put down is what progress did we make last year? So what have we gotten done to move us in that direction? And then this is where we think that area of focus needs to be to continue to make progress. Okay, does the organization make sense? So what I imagine is like at the end of this year, we'll go back, all right, so now where are we? After 24, 25, where are we? And this goes through 2028. So this has to do with implementing BAR, which is Building Assets Reducing Risk. That is a really a protocol. Like it's not necessarily, we didn't buy a program. It's really a strategy for how we're going to work with our 7th graders, our 8th graders, 9th and 10th, and this year 10th graders to make sure that we're following that progress every year, that we're using data to make sure that kids get what they need in the timeliness in which they need it, so that we're not losing track of them, and the next thing you know, 3 months later, they're failing and nobody noticed. So that is in progress. We have been implementing that. There was actually, to add to the amount of training that happened in professional development over the summer, I would say between the middle school and the high school, 70 to 80 teachers were at 2 days each. So one group was 2 days, the next group training both at the high school and here for the implementation of this. So it was the second round. PBIS. So I know we had some conversations last year about whether or not it was working, and I think it is true to say that we had irregular implementation, not consistent implementation across schools. Feel much more confident about that implementation with some of the changes that we made last year. So moving into this year, feel much more confident that each elementary school is going to be implementing this with fidelity, like the research-based piece of it. Because you can do PBIS light with say all the right words, but not actually do the things that need to happen. So I'll just shout out to Shannon. That was a big part of the work that she did at Leeds when she joined us. High school HPT, one of the goals is
Carrie?
down, yep, go.
With PBIS,
Yep.
is part of us moving forward, yes, we want to make sure, to truly give it a fair shot, we need to make sure it's being implemented fairly or uniformly. But are we still evaluating if it's still an actual useful, you know, some people still question, even if it's done completely by the book, it's really not accomplishing what we wanted to accomplish. So is that still under evaluation?
Yeah.
Or do we feel that just if we do it uniformly, yeah, it's gonna work?
So yes, because we're looking at that behavior data all the time, right? So we want it, our behavior's decreasing, our kids following the rules. Have we instructed them in a way so that we're reducing incidences that occur where kids aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing? I would say, it's safe to say, and I would invite Teresa or Kim or any of you guys, the last 2 years, yes, last year might be sort of when things started to turn the corner, but in the years prior to that, post-pandemic, like uniformly across schools, whew, things were not good. Kids came back from all of that in a really rough spot. So my first year as principal, that was still very much the case. I think last year is when things started to shift a little bit. I know for Shannon at Leeds, with some real heavy lifting, staff buying in, they made some dramatic changes and started to see some of that payoff towards the end. But I think at Turner Primary, we needed additional staff to do that, so you all approved that Dean of Students, where we put that in place in the middle of last year. And then that is a position that is now in place for Turner Elementary. Those are both schools of 300 kids that has no assistant principal, no nothing, just a single principal. So those deans of students, the hope will be, it made a dramatic difference at Turner Primary. I know, Kim, when you looked at your data, when Lindsay started, things really started to shift and plans could be made to address individual student needs.
Yes.
So we're hoping that same thing will happen at Turner Elementary.
I know we've been talking about putting student behavior data presentation actually on our agenda soon. I assume you can do that probably in the next meeting or two, or is that still a little ways off now that we're connected?
So what I have is what I put together last spring, so it would be a sort of like a background to that. I think we can either do it that way, or we can ask the principals to present what they're working on this year and what their data is, so either way. We have that from last year. We know we need to do some work around just how students interact with each other, how they learn to be nice, how they learn to cooperate, all those things that we value, and sort of that when you put all those bodies in a building, can they learn to get along with each other? And so other things that we did, so that PBIS real increase in the training and implementation at Leeds and Green in particular. There were some leadership changes at Green also that I think supported that. One of the things we want to make sure happens in every school is that for high school, middle school, it's an advisory. For elementary school, it's morning meeting. That wasn't done consistently across the district. The high school has an advisory period that they've been working on rebooting the last couple of years. We've now put into the contract stipend leadership positions to help with that. That was part of negotiations last year. So they're looking forward to sort of trying to move that forward for them as well with some internal leadership. But morning meeting is now being uniformly provided across the district. It was not that way prior to this. So with the goal of having kids feel like they belong to a community, that they feel responsibility to that community, and they feel that connection to school. And when it gets to middle school and high school, you know, kids have 6, 7, 8 teachers, it becomes harder and harder to have that single connection. And so the goal with advisory at the high school and the middle school level is for kids to have a point person that they feel like is in their corner at the school. So for this year, we're looking at year 2 of BAR. It's being implemented into grade 10. So we will have 7 through 10. Creating a common vision and understanding of the importance of inclusion and multi-tiered systems of support. So we're going to start looking at our special ed structures and if there are opportunities for students to participate more and more in regular ed settings. In particular, as a high school person, what I can say is that if a student is experiencing resource math, so like pull-out math starting in 2nd or 3rd grade, the chances they're ever going to participate in a regular ed math class by high school are pretty slim. Like you just don't get caught up. And so our goal is to start looking for more and more opportunities for kids to have success at those lower grades to try and make sure that they have those opportunities. Because like if you don't have algebra in high school, full algebra, that reduces opportunities outside of high school. So those are things that we've started the process. That is going to be a long-term process, but it's definitely something that we're committed to. And then tier 2 interventions,
Terry?
both for behavior and academic. Yeah.
Question on, very much in support of including kids, or my eyesight's getting worse and worse. It's getting scary, inclusion. But anyways, one of my concerns is, are we proceeding forward if we do not, we just talked earlier that we're down 20 some odd ed techs.
Yeah.
Which a lot of the case where we try to have these inclusion, I think we're putting way too much strain on the classroom teacher if we try to do it without the ed techs there for the support. So I guess one of the areas that I really want us to focus on is to make sure that, yeah, we work at that, but we don't force it forward unless we have the ed techs with them, and we have a way to ensure that those ed techs are actually doing what is needed in the classroom, and it's still just not falling onto that teacher, which my concern would be then the overall class is going to take a unfortunate hit. So that is one of the areas I'd want us to really make sure we don't get our cart.
So one thing that we're looking at starting this year in very small number is actually co-teaching between a special education teacher and regular ed teacher. So it's not actually an ed tech following a student into a class, but it's actually 2 teachers working collaboratively to support everybody in the classroom. Teresa, was that what you were going to say? Do you want to provide a little bit more information on that?
Yes, I know Rebecca and I are gonna be doing, presentations and information. I will say that, for example, today when we had our training, we had all elementary special education staff present so that they could see what the universal instruction is gonna be for all students. And then in the afternoon, when we moved into planning time, there was an instructional coach, 2 fifth grade teachers, and a special ed teacher that were working together to plan out like the first week of school. And as kids go into the classroom. It's gonna vary by student, and it's gonna vary by school. We're starting small, but is it tomorrow we have training on co-teaching? It
Yes.
is. So in 3 schools, we have, Jana has a group, Kim and Kristen, and so they're gonna be here with me, Rebecca, and our instructional coaches tomorrow, learning about the best ways to do co-teaching and how to support the teachers, but also the students. And the teachers have volunteered to do this. So it's very exciting. We'll have much, much more information.
And that would make me feel a little more comfortable proceeding forward in that. Again, my concern would be upon the workload we're throwing onto the teacher. So when it comes to that co-teaching, is it going to actually be the special ed teacher's job to help with that curriculum and so forth, with their students that they have to deal with, and not falling on to the regular ed teacher who we already know has a full workload ahead of them?
Yeah,
So
I mean,
are we expecting our teachers to now have to do 2 modified curriculum in addition to a curriculum now? per class.
that's why you would do that co-teaching model, right? Because, and I mean, I co-taught here my very first year as a teacher at Leavitt High School, right? So I and a special ed teacher were teaching world geography. I also did it, so it looks different, the partnership can be different, the kids are different, so it's hard to say there's like one specific thing, but it is a partnership. The special education teacher and the regular education teacher are each bringing a skill set to the classroom and to support the students. And so, I mean, I've been in a class where the special ed teacher teaches a full lesson. It's like their turn and they're teaching that lesson and the teacher becomes the support. In other cases, they're breaking them up into 2 groups and they're taking them to do different places. Like, there's so many opportunities. But I think sometimes the ed tech is not the best person to do that if they're not fully trained, whereas having 2 fully trained teachers sometimes can bring that outcome, make a better outcome. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely, as long as we can make that work.
Rebecca?
So part of this work that both Carrie and Teresa are talking about that align with the strategic plan, I don't know if you remember me last year, talking about the partnership that we've developed with UMF consultants, Dr. Jessica Apgar and Dr. Kate McLeod, and they wrote the book, The Way to Inclusion. And I do have some more books if anybody's interested in reading that. And then that is the process that we're taking. We have done, and Teresa and I will share with the board, that we've done an extensive service delivery audit between intervention and special education, and we have the results of that. And so as a team, the project that we're talking about is gonna be encompassing multiple years, where we'll be building capacity of staff, we'll be building documents, we'll be supporting students, we'll have communication that will be going out to the community, communication to all of you as well. I don't want you to think that this is, we're just gonna throw some teachers together and hope for the best. We're being very, very, very thoughtful about this whole process because we want it to work, and it's the law. Like, we have students with IEPs or students that are having challenges have every right to be educated in their least restrictive environment, and I had shared a little bit about that. We have research that backs the evidence that we're doing in instruction with teachers along with our core curriculum. So I think this is like, even though it's a bullet on there, it's a really large project that's going on.
Carrie?
Yeah.
We use the same model in our district, and so I just want to add on too that when implemented, the special ed teacher and the regular ed teacher also co-plan together. So it's not just like the regular ed teacher does all the lesson planning and all of a sudden a special ed teacher walks in and is kind of like in the role of what like an ed tech might be, whereas they might sit next to a student and support them, but they don't really do any of the teaching. They will have planned that lesson together, so they will know specifically, like Carrie said, you take this part, I take this part, where they'll both be at the front of the room or in small groups. So the model is meant to set it up so that they both are knowledgeable of the curriculum and what the lesson plan is going to be for each of those class periods.
And I understand that, and again, my concern falls to make sure that the regular ed teachers, we're already expecting to have a plan. I just am not looking to, I'm nervous that we might be throwing too much on the general, on them at this time.
I think
So I
actually,
just-
I think it actually is like sharing the load.
Yeah.
They live together
Yeah.
and support one another.
And the only
in that
teachers
way.
who are doing this year are voluntary.
No, I understand.
So
Cause I think general ed
if
teachers
we had just
are
like
sort of
told
like-
everybody to do it, that'd be a
Yeah.
different thing, and that'd be concerning.
And a general ed teacher, would be super helpful to say, oh, a special ed teacher who knows way more about special education, come with your expertise and help me on how I can teach the students in my room who have IEPs and 504s. So it is, I think that you'll see that the general ed teachers will find it to be very much the support that they,
And
Yeah.
I hope, I'm just,
yeah.
All right, so objective 2, yes, go ahead.
The second step curriculum.
Yep.
That's new this year?
No, I think the very first, there was some implementation of it 2 years ago, and then I think everybody had it last year, but there was some funkiness to it, because we didn't have a guidance counselor at Leeds, like how it was used, but it is definitely, in all the elementary schools now.
And it's being used in conjunction with regular guidance. Can you just speak to, kind of what that looks like in the classroom, or how much time in the classroom is, like how is that different than a regular academic curriculum?
So, Kim, do you wanna talk about that?
The plan, again, I have a new person this year. It's gonna be about a 30-minute block.
So wait, are you talking about guidance or
Guidance?
second step? Ashley?
Well, it says in conjunction, so is
Yes.
it being held at the same time?
Okay.
Or I guess just explain, just looking for a little bit of clarification on what it is, how it's being held, what the time in the classroom looks like on that.
Yeah, well, it's the curriculum, well, that's about a 30-minute to do a lesson. And then the guidance, it might be a mix too, of the guidance delivering some parts of it and the teachers doing some parts of it. And then also, if the guidance counselor, if the teachers bring up in a situation or a trend that they're seeing, that the guidance counselor would develop lessons to meet that need. So it's flexible, it can be flexible,
So
Is it like one lesson a week for a second step? I can't remember.
yes.
So it's weekly, it's not a daily.
I just wanted to add that, probably over a decade ago, it was, being used in pre-K and kindergarten, particularly to help students focus on how to get along with others.
One more question. To improve, so in the HPT,
Yep.
one of the goals is to improve curriculum development. What would that look like, I guess? What kind of improvements are you hoping to have?
So when I got here, Eben was working on everybody's trying to reboot after COVID, right? So this is 2 years ago. He's like, we gotta get back to what, the lessons and the curriculum that involved with HPT. And so he had a binder. He was like, I gotta bring this binder back out, right? So I think the hope is that they're gonna be able to reboot some of that. I assume, I have not seen exactly what the curriculum is for that, but I know, actually, you probably know better than anybody, Judith, in terms of the kinds of things that you're doing.
Things like career exploration,
Yes.
goal setting,
Yeah.
particularly like with the freshmen, like what to give them some guidance for through their high school years, what they might want to accomplish. Trying to remember what else.
Probably grades,
We focus on grades.
preparing for student-led
And
conferences.
the revamping of it by having a person at each grade level who's like the point person. We're meeting on Monday as a group of HPT people for like an hour, hour and a half, something like that, so that we can talk about, okay, the first month we will focus on these things, and here's some paperwork that you can use with your students, and that kind of thing.
Sounds, 'cause So I had HPT when I was at
Yeah,
Leavitt.
yeah.
I had the same teacher all through.
Yeah, you have the
Same
same
process,
person all
yeah.
4 years.
It's like, that's exactly
Yeah.
what we did. So so it sounds like it fell off for a little bit.
Yes.
COVID sort of put everything, put a lot of things, sort of, they just fell apart, or people got out of the habit, or,
And
so
there
I
was
think
a
it's just.
turnover of staff too, so
Yes.
the consistency of it changed.
100%. That makes sense? Okay, anybody else? Okay. Second objective in this goal, it's the first of 8 goals. Objective 2, quality training for all staff for effective practices in working with diverse student body. So again, bar training is part of that, PBIS is part of that, social emotional learning, making sure kids can get along with each other, that they know how to behave in school, to, what does a learning mindset look like, professional development around other discipline and behavior type strategies, and then making sure that, again, more meeting, those kinds of things. So we did that bar, some of this is repetitive. We did the bar, we've made those changes in PBIS. All elementary staff have now had the mental health first aid training, which was something offered that we just needed time to get through that. So next year, focusing on, again, year 2 of bar, having that common vision for multi-tiered systems of support, tier 2 interventions, and then the leadership of HPT to sort of reboot that curriculum. And then the third objective is around digital safety, digital citizenship. We did not do a ton of stuff on this last year. The one thing that we did was implemented Lightspeed, which is a program that monitors students' use of the Google platform that all of them are using. It is useful. We will get an alert if a student is searching for things that may suggest that they're suicidal. We may, like things that would be an emergency, which happened a small number of times last year. Or if kids are starting to fight, they get clever, they'll open a Google Doc and they'll start fighting words on a Google Doc. So it's not in their email, it's in a document, they're going back and forth, and then Lightspeed will pick up that they're starting to it's fighting words. So if somebody says, I'm gonna kick your bad words, then you'll get an alert. And so sometimes you go and deal with the students who are exchanging fighting words. So it's I don't know, Jana, you can talk about it's bigger a deal at the middle school and the high school. Sometimes it's a pain in the rear because you end up with a student doing an assignment that, they're supposed to be doing and you get an alert. But in other cases, you can intervene.
It's good though, because it goes sort of through almost vetted through an AI process first, which is a little bit helpful to make sure if you're researching the Civil War and the, for example, they could be writing about guns or weapons or something like that. So it's pretty good at filtering to make sure it's not curriculum related. If they're not able to say with confidence that it's curriculum related, it gets moved to a live person who will then be a second set of eyes. And if they continue to be concerned after they look at where it is, if it's an email, if it's a search on the internet, if it's on a shared Google Doc, then that live person will reach out, and in our case, it gets posted to, an email gets sent to myself, it gets sent to our school counselor. We have Deputy Ham, our SRO on there, and Carrie and Teresa as well. And then one of us will just say on it, so the rest of the group knows we're following up. The majority of the time, kids are saying unkind things and they delete it, they think it's gone, and it's not gone. And then sometimes there's been instances where a student will say something that's concerning, and then when our school counselor meets with them, they share that they didn't know anyone was gonna know what they were writing, but there's actually things that would be helpful if they talked through and were able to follow up on it. And so for as many times as it's sort of annoying to chase down, the instances in which we've been able to support a kid who either has a conflict with a peer or some negative self-thoughts, it's been really, really beneficial. So I feel like we've gotten better as the year progressed at working on the filters so that the only things we get after school hours are the ones that are the really high concern. And there's been a few times I've called someone's home and just said, hey, can you check on so-and-so, this came through, and I'll continue doing that.
This was a major concern of mine when I got here. I was used to having that as a high school principal, and we just didn't have anything like that here. And So I really felt strongly that it needs to be in place, especially since all of our kids are on the same platform and we have the ability to monitor it. So, big thing for us this year is to work on our cell phone policy, our device use policy. Evan has been communicating with me pretty regularly about concerns around sort of just the amount of disruption that comes from cell phone use in school, bullying. There's more and more research about sort of the negative impacts on students. So that will be some big policy work that we do this year that we're just in the planning stages of. But that is sort of like, stay tuned because we are feeling like the tide is turning and it's time to sort of make some, we would suggest, very bold moves around sort of cell phone use in school.
Is that showing up on agendas in the near future? Yeah?
I mean, it's,
Like a couple months away, or?
it's on the,
Next week.
it's on the list of that Teresa emailed out,
Okay.
the policies at a glance
Yeah.
list. And, so that's one of them that, needs to be addressed this year that I think Evan and Carrie brought to Teresa, so.
What is that?
Yeah.
I guess, where is it on the, I still haven't found that list anyways, but was that the list sent out last year or has it been sent out again recently?
Sent out again recently.
Okay, anyways.
So it's confusing because it was actually, I sent out an email clarifying it, but I just sent it out this afternoon. It was in the backup materials for the curriculum and policy
Okay.
meeting, and it's like the last page, but you'll find it there, so
But is it,
scroll
so
through.
where, as you can clearly see, I haven't seen it, where is, because I know this is an issue,
Yeah.
a couple of the board members
So-
have had concerns, is it,
So
where are
we
we
haven't
talking?
put a time, we don't have a time on it yet. What we're doing, Evan, Teresa and I are working on sort of like a to-do list of like, this is what we wanna do in this order to get to this place. I think we gotta do some community work, we gotta do, we gotta work with teachers, we gotta work with families. We actually met with the assistant superintendent in RC1, which is Bath High School, Morse, that area. They recently just changed their policy. She had a really thorough sort of process to go through, which I think is a good idea for a change that's as significant as we're hoping it will be. I think we need to do a lot of communication and get a lot of information out. My experience as a high school principal, there will be parents who are very concerned about anything that would be separating their child from their phone in case of emergency, those kinds of things. So we have work to do around that to make sure that that doesn't become a barrier.
And I know that Evan must be like kind of preparing for all of this because the incoming freshmen just got the email that they're not allowed to have their phones on them during class. And then he provided times when they would have access to their phones throughout the day, but that they cannot have phones in the classroom starting this year, so.
Yeah, it's hard to hit the reset button with seniors,
Yeah.
but hitting the reset button with ninth graders to like get them ready
Right.
is exactly what he's doing. Yep.
Just so I think you and Evan know as you're coming forward with this, I know that there's myself and a couple others that are maybe thinking even stricter rules than what you're thinking.
I
So-
don't know if you know what I'm thinking.
Stricter than what she's saying.
Agreed, we're in agreement.
Right,
So,
and that's what
so
I.
I just,
Evan
maybe
is
save some
working
time in the
within-
future,
Yeah.
just,
Evan is working within the confines that he has right now,
Right.
but no, I think we're gonna
Okay.
suggest some bold moves
it's fine by me.
at some point, okay?
I think Brunswick just passed one too.
Biddeford, it was a B one, yes. I've been collecting, every time I see one, it's on my list.
There's actually a program, I'll send it, I'm a parent of Falmouth, and they found a grant that pays for, if you're
Yonder.
gone to a concert and you can't.
Yonder? We're all over it, we're all
You
over
put your
it.
phone in it, you got it.
Yep, we're all over it.
A little bit of anxiety
We're
here.
all over it.
I know.
Okay, so if you recall, one of the goals was for us to really try to make as many decisions as possible with using data, right? Not everything is gonna be data, but there's a lot of information that we can get that can kind of give us a sense. And at each objective, we sort of said, this is how we're gonna know if we're making progress, what data we're gonna look at, what evidence we're gonna have. So, certainly not everything, but it represents a huge jump forward from what we had before. It was all out there, we just weren't pulling it together and looking at it. So, as you know, we do school climate surveys. Those started March before I got here, so we've consistently done it so that if you do the same thing every year, you can see if you're making progress. So I pulled together the family, and I gave a presentation last winter, if you remember, sort of providing you with this. But it just looks at between the very first time this was given in the spring of '22 to last November when we did it during student-led conferences, sort of for each school, for family, sort of the change that has occurred, and then for staff, because staff is also a major concern, that they feel as if the climate of their school is a place they want to stay. So, Leeds has the least amount of growth. November, Shannon's been here 2 months, so we're, that's a school that was still in transition. So our hope is that we'll see those changes, but pretty significant change in a lot of, in each of the schools in terms of sort of that feeling. In some cases, the score is up slightly, or it's already been pretty good. So we're making progress. Certainly the family climate at TES, when I got here, TES was sort of the school on fire. They had a transition of principal, there was a lot of community unrest around that. So you can see the family climate at TES was a 2.77, was up to 3.27 by last November. So Kristen's done a lot of really good work there. Yeah.
Could you remind, 3.37 of what? Like, what does that mean?
Is
Out of 10, out of 5?
One through 4.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So again, you've seen that. I've given you some of that information already. So this is something that we wanted to look at, special ed referrals. So our hope is the more we build up the interventions, kids will not maybe need special ed because we're going to get to their issues earlier. So you can see this is 2017-18. We've been slowly climbing since the pandemic. It's skyrocketed. However, last year, even though the number of referrals have gone up, so teachers or families having concerns, the number of students who've actually qualified has started to go down. So it tells us that people are still expressing concerns, but we're not necessarily seeing that same climb with kids who qualify. So I don't know really what that means. Do we need to reset? Like, is this a student who's just struggling in general? That's not really special ed? Or, what that looks like. And sometimes people are just sort of like, let's just eliminate that as a possibility so that we can focus on, whatever else is going on. Still climbing, however, so there's that. And then this is, there's lots of other behavior data, but just to keep it simple for suspensions, and this is district-wide. Pandemic, nobody got suspended because people were in school every other day and things just didn't happen. But when everybody came back, it skyrocketed. So this just tells you the total number of suspensions, how many of them are out of school, how many of them are in school. So you can see, this is this year, 23-24. We are bringing it back down to pre-pandemic levels. We don't want kids out of school when they miss. Here's the thing what I think is the most exciting is the dramatic drop of special education students who've been suspended. I mean, we were 27% of special ed students were suspended in 21-22. Like a quarter of our kids who had an IEP got suspended that year. That's just like out of control. Yeah. So this year, we've got that number down to 13%. So in my mind, that's like the thing to celebrate in that data is clearly we are doing more work to support those students so that they don't get to the point where we've got to send them home. And we have elementary students being suspended, even though the law is very tight on that. Sometimes it's behavior that's so dangerous that we have to suspend them regardless. The law does allow that it does have that small piece. So I think huge victory there. All right, instruction. Making sure we have varied instructional practices for our students, project-based, real world, those kinds of things. So this was not a huge area of focus for us this year. We spent a lot of time on curriculum, we spent a lot of time on PBIS, a lot of other things. This coming year, one of the big things we want to do is we want to start to really build that common assessment system as part of our curriculum work. It is painfully obvious to us that we don't have enough other assessments to look at to see what progress our kids are making. We have the state assessment it's changed, so the data that we have from last year is the first time with that new assessment. We haven't got this year's data yet. So for us to feel like we have a real sense of how the kids are doing, it's time to start doing that. So that's gonna be a huge priority for us. Implementation of the reading instruction materials at the elementary school will also be that. So I just want to point out, there's like this data evidence, a lot of times it's data that I've already put in, so I didn't put it in twice. It would have been repetitive for people. Okay, so the school climate data shows up again. It's up in that first one, I didn't include it. So this is the data we look at for the BAR implementation for grades 7 through 9 and the failure rate. And the goal would be to bring that down, that kids are getting the interventions they need. So it depends on the grade. So at the 7th grade, failure rate overall went down. It went up for students with IEPs, but it went down for kids who are socioeconomically disadvantaged, and it went down for kids who have a 504, which is a disability. 8th grade, that also went down. Huge drop in the special ed failure rate. And again, a drop in socioeconomic. And at the high school, their failure rate went up a little bit. Special ed went up. It's down for socioeconomic, down for kids with 504. So in the first year of implementation, I think there are some successes in there, and some things to celebrate. We're still in the process of implementing. Curriculum, everybody's favorite topic. We got started, we got a huge start last year. We have Atlas to help support the development of curriculum, make sure that teachers can access it quickly. So we started that, we purchased Atlas, we've got people trained on it. We spent 3 workshop days at the elementary level, middle school, high school spent a lot of time on that. It actually brought some good collaboration between the middle school and the high school that hadn't happened before to sort of get straight on what's happening between those 2 schools. They in fact did those meetings again today as another way of doing that. And the elementary math curriculum, we started having conversations. We weren't confident that everybody, similar to other things that kind of fell a little bit during COVID, we needed to reboot to get everybody implementing the math curriculum the same. So that's going to be a huge part of this year, because I think we did discover that it was not necessarily 100% across all classrooms in the elementary level. So curriculum development team, Teresa's working on that so that we can try to move the process along quicker, but have a smaller team sort of making some key decisions before we bring it to the full staff. And so that we can actually get those things in place, and the common assessment system as well. The next one is a stipend pool in each school. We budgeted for that. Gabby and I spent a lot of time this afternoon trying to remember how much money it is, and we can't. We gotta find that money. But our hope is to build the number of opportunities kids have for co-curriculars, in particular at the elementary level. So just, this is co-curricular data, provided this last year. Just tells you what percent of the population is participating in a co-curricular. So this is middle school. 68% of kids in the fall are doing something, which is awesome. The high school we've put in this year continues to climb. I showed you this information, but it continues to improve the total number of kids. The high school has the data for the whole school. Last year, 52% of kids were 301 kids, which was up from 282 last year, participated in at least one sport. And then this is a list of the clubs. Again, we're trying to grow that at the elementary level. It'll be a slow process, but we will keep picking away at it. And I think also part of this is inventorying opportunities for students to excel. So again, we haven't done a ton with this, but Teresa touched on it with the gifted and talented. So I wanted to make sure when we pulled some data, it was actually an opportunity to celebrate, which we hadn't realized. So this is just a total number of AP tests that are taken each year. It was a drop off during the pandemic, but we're back up for the kids who are doing that. But this is the number of kids who are being served in gifted and talented. In 2017, 2018, it was 96 kids. Last year was 165. super exciting, which I don't think, Teresa, you knew how awesome it was until I was like,
I
let's
knew
pull
it
the
was growing,
numbers.
I didn't know it was that awesome.
Let's pull the numbers. So 165 kids, so we've made tremendous progress in that. And then this is, I asked Evan at the last minute, dual enrollment, like the number of kids who are either taking college class, either on our campus or at a college, or enrolled in LRTC. That number jumped pretty significantly this year from last year. So 24 kids took college courses off the high school campus. Yeah,
What are the district gifted and talented services that are offered?
Teresa?
So, services are offered in reading, writing, all the content areas, science, social studies, music, art, and, did I say science? I don't know, so math, reading, all the content areas. And then for last year was our first year including third graders, so at the end of second grade year, they can be nominated for application to the program, and then we review we review the full information. It's a blind process, so those of us on the committee don't know who the students are. And then Wonder Wednesdays is something that was added in 3 years ago, which is a weekly, the teachers sign up for it in grades K to 2, and the gifted and talented teacher comes into the classroom with a theme-based activity. Kim, do you remember any of the ones that she did last year?
I can't pick up it, I'm sorry.
I'm thinking they were,
We have them making bridges.
they were doing, it was STEM work is what they were doing, and it was usually based around a book. I can definitely get more information on that. But we just felt like that's another opportunity for students to participate with their own teacher, but then another teacher coming into the classroom to provide this information, this activity. It's hands-on activities for them.
Is the program pulling the kids that are approved out of the classroom, or how is it being applied to the students that pull?
Right now, it's a pull-out model, and they are grouped at each school. We have 2 full-time teachers, and I know at the middle school, students are going during their study halls, so they're not missing academics. Same thing at the high school, and at the elementary school, they are, it varies. So if they are gifted and talented in math, it's usually once a week, so they might be having their regular math instruction in their classroom, but then once a week they will go out and work with the teacher on math. So at that level, it varies a little bit, elementary, because there's so many competing factors. But I know at the middle school and high school, we've worked really hard. It's been a work in progress to have the students know that.
Kyle, did you have a question?
Yeah, just on the graph, like with the asterisks, like down in the bubbles.
Oh, yeah, so that jump, what I remember Evan telling me was that you have to get, if you offer a dual enrollment college course on your campus, you have to have a teacher that meets the qualification of whatever college is approving it. So I think that was a year where he lost a teacher who had been approved, so fewer kids could access it at Levitt. So sometimes it's a drop just because it's just not offered anymore, because the teacher who was doing it, that CM signed off on or USM signed off on, they don't work here anymore.
115 is a big jump. I mean, like, is
Yeah.
that gonna be sustained, or?
I don't know. I think it depends if the staff who are offering it stay consistent. But again, I mean, 24 kids took a class off of campus. Transportation becomes an issue. It gets much more complicated for kiddos to take a class off. But, yeah, it's huge.
That also includes the LRTC stuff too.
Yep, and LRTC it grew last year because Edward Little opened.
Right.
And so we opened a couple more programs. Yeah,
And some of those college courses, are any of those online, the 24?
I don't know. Okay, around staff, recruiting and retaining highly qualified, effective staff. A big issue for us has been special education. We put a couple things in place last year to try and make the job doable and to try and prevent the amount of turnover that we've seen. One of the goals is early release. We didn't do anything on that last year. That is going to be our goal for this year. And then continue to use the instructional coaches. So we provided for you sort of like the number of instructional coaching cycles that happened, the number of book studies that occurred. Teresa and I talked about trying to keep a little bit better understanding of what the impact of those coaches are. But our special education teachers, the information we gathered was that having time for case management as well as the secretaries in the place where the secretaries were consistent for the year made a difference. We had some turnover. We're hoping that the people we've hired this year is going to be the right group. So I did some of this work with Amy Pelletier to just figure out where we are. So this is unfilled teaching positions. Like we couldn't fill either a teaching position or professional, sort of like the school psychologist, sort of professional staff. So last year was the worst. We had 8 that we could not fill. We have brought it down to 3 this year that we have not been able to fill. And for special ed, last year we had 4 unfilled teaching positions in special education. This year it's 1. And that is the one new position that, if you recall, we created last spring, FSP at Leeds, because the program grew. So Rebecca's working and Shannon are working on a plan to sort of, but that's the one position we haven't been able to fill. So there'll be a plan to sort that out. But the middle school had half of, they were missing 2 of their 4 special ed teachers last year. No, last year was the year, no, you were missing 2 special ed teachers, right? Yeah, so. And the high schools had 1 unfilled for a year or 2, so it was a much better year. Learning outcomes, shared set of outcomes that measure how students are learning. So consistent timelines for data, making sure we have an annual report looking at all of our data. So we spent a lot of time doing that. Middle school and the high school certainly got much more proficient at that in their BAR protocol. We did a lot of work around attendance this year and making sure that we were reviewing that. I will say that we have concerns around the MEA data has not been released yet. The DOE sort of put a pause on it because they had concerns about the data. I think there was an email at the end of today how scores are going to be adjusted. So,
What are the concerns?
yeah, so I'm going to see if I say it right. So the MEA, which is an NWEA, it's a version of the NWEA.
The main through-year assessment.
Right.
It's now the main 3 years.
So
We keep changing it.
27 of the questions that kids get contribute to the main scaled score. That's like the proficiency score. And then 18 questions contribute to a growth score, which is what NWA is used to, right? That's what they're known for, is like being able to see if kids have grown. So they may not be proficient, but have they grown from where they were before? There were a lot of questions around, in particular, that growth data. Schools were reporting that they saw some really funky numbers that didn't make sense to them. We had some questions too. I don't know if it rose to the same level as other schools, what they saw. So if you recall last year, we didn't get the MEA data until like October. So it's gonna come sooner than that.
Did you see the statement that came out today?
Yes, so we'll start to get that. So they had pushed, they said to the NWA, you've got to review your data, something doesn't look right. So
We'll see that in a month or 2.
I hope we see it sooner than that.
No, I mean like as a board.
Oh, yeah, I think you'll see it in September.
Okay.
Knowing that we got that message today, I think it'll be resolved in September, yeah.
The new testing window opens, so.
Yeah, right, so
Like,
it's a
we kinda
challenge
need
that it's
that
so
before
late,
we start
whatever,
testing
it's
again.
the best we can do. So we want to continue to look at that, make sure that we're doing data review. The new reading instructional materials provide us with some new assessment data than what we were using prior to that we're really excited about. Okay, so objective 2 is assessment, grading, and reporting. So we want to make sure that we have grading guides that guide teachers about how they're supposed to do grading, because when you don't have that, you have people freestyling and doing different things. We need to look at our standards. Once the curriculums are completed, we need to update those in report cards. We want to make sure families understand how their students are being graded. So we have parts of that. The high school has a grading guide. The middle school worked on that this year. The middle school is also working on a family grading guide. There was questions around some grades last year that just raised its head for families. So that is something that we did not do universally as a group. The TES has a draft of that guide, So we want to continue to work on that. Our goal, we might be able to beat this, but the goal was to have faculty grading guides for this year and then a family grading guide for the year after. We may be able to do that quicker. And then we need to look at our own internal assessment system so that we have more data than relying on the state to provide it to us 4 months later. So for, yeah, sorry.
Just a quick
Oh, sorry.
question. I'm
Yep.
not familiar with the tiers of schools. Leeds was designated as
Oh,
a tier
yeah.
3.
So when did we give them that information? Oh,
It
that was last fall.
October,
That was
but
last
we're
fall.
going to give you more information on it
Yeah.
next meeting,
Yes.
right?
So last fall, we reported to you that the DOE had identified Leeds as a tier 3 school. So that refers, that's a reference to some federal guidelines. It's a school that's struggling on a number of indicators. So it could be attendance, math, reading, literacy.
And they
So
look at socioeconomic, and students with special needs and the whole general population.
So if subgroups of those students are not performing, so we'll provide you more information, but we told you about that last year. I think the middle school was a tier 2, but it was based on data from 2021. So like, it was and we really struggled to get really good information from the state about where it came from. We have more information this year, and so we're gonna provide that to you on the 5th, and then Shannon, when we're at Leeds, Shannon's gonna do a presentation for you that provides you with information about what we're doing and what the plans are in place. So the data that I have for you, so updated, this reading assessment that we do. This reading assessment is this the one that's gonna be going away with the new instructional materials?
Yes.
So last year was the last year we were gonna be doing that. We have new instructional materials.
Partially.
Partially, okay.
Yes.
So, but that is assessments that teachers provide, at each grade level. So, at multiple grade levels, a lower outcome. It's part of the reason why we're feeling really good about new instructional, materials.
If
Peter.
we're changing, or if that assessment's going away, how do the two assess, you're gonna have a sudden gap there.
Mhm.
So how do you accommodate that? Is there, I guess I'd be more curious, probably it's been given to us, but it's gone out of my head now, why we're leaving these assessments to another version? If we're gonna
So-
have a gap, and how are we gonna keep consistency to know how it is working?
Yeah, so this is an assessment that goes with the reading instructional materials we had. So we are changing our instructional materials, so there will be different assessments that go with those instructional materials. The one thing that will be consistent is the MEA data. So like we'll get our reading data this year, and we'll get it next year, and the hope will be that we'll see some change based on the changes that we made in instructional materials. But we had a lot of questions about how consistent and with as much fidelity that all teachers were providing, and I think there were some gaps in that reading program that we recognized that needed to be addressed. Ashley, sorry.
Is the new assessment gonna be similar in that it's gonna be like objective measurable criteria?
So these are more assessments that happen during the school year.
There's two kinds of assessments, and we're really fully unpacking them. So there will be weekly assessments, which will measure comprehension for students, and then there will be modules that will measure a variety of standards that the students are working on. So once we learned some about them. We've had 2 meetings now with the principals, and we're learning more about that. And
So the
we can
module would
explain
be a
what
longer learning period.
Yeah, the module is more like end of unit assessment, whereas the weekly assessments would be more like a quiz.
And this is similar. I mean, these are they provide this assessment throughout the year. Is it fall, winter, spring on that?
Benchmarks.
Benchmarks, yeah.
Is that showing most grades stepping down?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
yep,
So,
yeah. Yes, there were a number of concerns that we had in terms of like the fidelity with which people were implementing the program, but the program's been here for a while, but also gaps that are in the program that we thought weren't really serving kids the best that it could be served. So, yes.
So the hope is the new program is gonna make improvements.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely. And then these are last year's scores. You've already seen them. I just put them up there to remind you, like last year's scores. Math is the one, if you remember, we had lots of conversations, concerns around math. We're still concerned about math. Reading a little bit less so, but we don't have the 2024 yet. Yep.
And if I remember right, it's very hard to find any sort of assessments that actually compare nationally. Is that correct?
This one
Most-
does not compare nationally, correct?
Are there any that do compare nationally, so we're actually looking how we're competing against, how are we doing compared to a district in New York or a district in
So
California?
the only one that I'm aware of that I know people reference is NAEP. I don't know what that stands for, NAEP, NAEP. But it's given, like I had to administer it one time for sophomores at Poland, like, I don't know, 7 years ago. So they sort of just randomly pick schools within a state to give that assessment, but it's the same assessment in every state.
So there's really no, to your knowledge, there's no real way for us to know
But
how we're doing how our kids would fare against a national.
it would only be the state. We wouldn't, like, I didn't get data on Poland Regional High School's NAEP scores compared to, it just goes into the pot of Maine. That's the only one that I'm aware of, unless anybody else can.
So I guess what Peter's saying though is like, we can look at that NAEP data and apparently see how Maine is doing compared to New York.
Correct.
And maybe from comparing us to the state, we could almost
Yeah.
like buy,
Yeah.
If Maine's really low overall, then
yeah,
you know,
using
we-
the
we-
transit property.
It's not anything really exciting to be average in Maine if Maine is really low overall. So I guess, it's just curious how that,
Yeah, and
If
I
there's
don't,
any way to
know
know.
how the new MEA, because again, this is only year 2. So the awesome thing about the DOE is like, when you hit year 6 or 7, it's time to make a new test. So we all do the best we can to be like, all right, well, we had a trend, we had a plan, now we gotta make a different plan, and so that's sort of, that's what we're doing. Yep.
Maybe I'm just not reading or understanding how the graph is reading. So 38% of 10th graders have 40% of proficiency?
We're considered proficient.
The blue is the statewide.
Blue is the state,
green
sorry,
district.
blue is the
In
state,
comparison to.
so it gives
Right.
it, yeah,
What's on this axis? What's this?
percent proficient.
It's only 38% of our students are,
10th graders, last year, 38% of 10th graders last year were considered proficient in math according to the MEA.
what's the proficient? Is it, like, where's the, maybe I'm.
It's a 4-point, isn't it a 4-point scale? Like, I'd have to go, it's, you take the kids who are proficient and excelling, and it's that group of kids, they're all just proficient. So, I mean, we can look, I could get the data of like who is excelling, like you can see sort of, there's substantially below, meeting, exceeding. So all the kids who are meeting and exceeding is what this represents.
Oh, okay, so this axis is just duplication of, it's a duplicate axis then? Oh, okay, now I'm confused.
So this is math and this is reading. So the percent of students who are meeting and exceeding of all the kids in 10th grade.
Okay, I see.
Yep, so in 3rd grade, 66% of our kids were meeting or exceeding in math, 62% of them were in the state, so it gives you just a comparison.
But is there, so that if I'm understanding correctly, there's no bell curve that we can compare these against, right? There's no bell curve within Maine or nationwide?
It's not a bell curve, it's like, are you proficient, yes or no, and it's just the total number of kids who are proficient. Like, it's not, I don't think it's a bell
Well,
curve.
you would think you'd be able to build a curve out of it.
I don't know what, I don't know. Don't have a response.
Like if you plotted all the students, would the majority of them fall in that curve of being proficient with your?
I assume,
IMP?
I mean, what we can
Not.
see is a bar with like red, yellow, you know what I mean? They give you that sort of, so you can see how many kids are in each. So you do get a sense of like where the bulk of students are, but it's not so specific, so you know how many kids were so close to meeting, but they're in the not meeting category, and then the smaller number, you know what I mean? It doesn't, it's not so
Right.
specific that you,
But-
like,
I guess what I'm interested in
Scat
is, you know, so our 10th graders were probably up against a pretty considerable wall a few years ago, for instance, that could impact their math scores. Are these math scores of our students, their proficiency rating, I'd be interested to know what that looks like as a trend, either across the state or across the country, where you can see like, oh, like, I mean, these are terrible numbers,
We
but
talked
they'd be a
about this
lot
last year, yes.
easier to swallow if you saw that, well, yeah, like nationally, it's 40%, and so we're actually slightly above that. Do you see what I'm?
yep. So
Going
we're
forward?
comparing apples and oranges, because there's just no test that crosses borders. And we don't have a trend, because this is the first year of that test, was 2023. So when this all and we got all this late data, because during the pandemic, the DOE sort of moved us from the previous test and just moved us all to NWEA. And then the federal government said you can't do that. So then it's this fight between Maine and about what kind of test we can actually give. So the one we gave last year is the one that the federal government said, yes, that's okay. But it took months and months and months and months and months. So.
I think
So we don't have, but I will say, what we talked about last year, math was impacted the greatest during the pandemic because direct instruction is needed, and that is what kids didn't get enough of because they weren't in school full time. I mean, I saw that in my previous school, like math took the biggest hit. So when we get those, we'll bring them to you. Just giving you the graduation rate, and the graduation rate broken down to two different groups, economic disadvantage and special ed. And then post-secondary enrollment, that actually is available at the state website. They follow kids. National Clearinghouse provides that data to us. Okay, communication, consistent communication. This was not an area of focus us for this year, but next year we will have, as part of our emergency plan, a crisis communication plan. That was sorely lacking. We just didn't have that. So I told you last year we contracted with an area communications firm, Rink, that is providing us assistance and did some work with us over the summer. That's being funded through grant funds. We are going to start to work on some common expectations for school communication with families. We started that work this summer. And how we're going to work to communicate the MTSS inclusion work. So more goals around like making sure that we're doing it, how often, what should be included in that school communication. School environment, safe, clean environment, school grounds and buses. Is this the last one?
Mm-hmm.
Woo! All right, we made some huge progress on here, just saying. District Safety Committee is established. We have an SRO who has become very quickly an essential member of our team here. I think every principal and lots of teachers would all agree. A revision of emergency plans and ongoing training. So we did a big revision of the emergency plans this summer. Not as big as Tyler was hoping, but we made progress. He's working with Central Maine Community College to print flip books that make easy access for teachers to be able to just see emergency plans they need to do, so they don't have to walk around with a big notebook. We have information from walkthroughs that Maine School Management did on some safety issues that involve the law that we're gonna start to work on. Those things haven't been done in years, just with all the turnover that we've had in leadership. Threat assessment was implemented fully. We continue to train new staff members and we'll probably do some refreshing training, but that was implemented across all the schools. And great, by having an SRO, our communication with first responders is much better. Much more communication with all of that. So our big goal this year is to conduct reunification drills, have all staff members do that. Our goal, that right now, we're reorganizing where we think the reunification site for all the schools except the high school will be the high school, so that we have one process for doing it to help all the staff do that. We had different reunification sites in each town, but it was churches, halls, and so we found out, like, we didn't actually have access, there wasn't internet, like, all these things that really would require for this to not be a chaotic process. It also is part of our FEMA grant to get a generator at the high school. By designating it as a reunification site, it helps with that. So the high school will reunify, they will split between TES and TPS, but it will help us to have a more sort of like thoughtful and calm reunification. If something should happen at another school where the kids can't stay and parents have to come get their kids, keeping it in district and having a plan that high school staff can support, no matter what school it is, will just, I think, help to make it a much more, something that I'm gonna feel better about in terms of if we should ever have to do it. So the only data I have around this is threat assessment. We actually get data on how many were conducted and what the outcomes were. I think 34, 38 were conducted. The vast majority of them were considered transient, which in our training is like, you know, kids says, I'm gonna kill you, and they didn't mean it, because we say that all the time. So things that they're not actual threats. But those ones that become much more serious, in some cases you might know about that, or we have to put some plans in place, or it's a kid in crisis, a family in crisis, and we intervene.
Was that for all the schools?
Yep, yep,
I assume we'll be able to start tracking that year to year.
yes.
This-
Yep, because the threat assessment process is run through a computer program that's right now provided free from the state as a part of the grant. Navigate 360 is what it's called, and so when they do the threat assessment, they just fill it out within the form. Tyler has access to all of them, and he actually helped with sort of closing them out. We needed to do some final things to sort of get that final data, so he's able to go in the back end and do some of that work.
How many students?
We have about 2,000 students.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. So 30, one thing I said 34, but when I counted, that was 38, so I think maybe something got entered in twice or something like that, but 34, 38. Facilities, last one. We're gonna complete that capital improvement plan this year. We're gonna develop a plan for utilizing our fund balance and a long-term plan for how we deal. We're gonna finish that stupid wastewater treatment plan. And we're gonna deal with stuff.
We're gonna get rid of the containers.
We're trying.
Yes, we actually are.
Did you
That
finally
is-
throw away some stuff?
Yeah, we made huge progress. I spent a lot of time walking around and declaring things obsolete and junk. It was really great. I did it just today at the middle school. But we hauled a bunch of stuff out of the containers at TES, and I came out, I mean, it was rusted, shelving, like, and I just said, junk, 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 junk. Take it to the dump. So,
The one that really gets me is the one in Leeds, which is right out front, if it's still there.
yeah, well,
It's still there, we're
Leeds
working on it.
did massive clean out, massive. They had, the sad thing is, they had a ton of math curriculum books that were just sitting there that weren't even obsolete. They just weren't being used, so they got distributed to other schools. Lots of things Shannon found in the basement. So the Leeds basement has gotten a major overhaul and a lot of stuff has been hauled out. Dave Coburn had made that like a big goal for the summers to
But
get rid
it
of
didn't go
junk.
into the container, did it?
No, absolutely not. Nope.
My goal is to get rid of it.
Yes.
It's a little redneck, but.
Yeah, yep, so, and transportation. So we made bus ride was a huge win, you know, behavior protocols in the spring, we're gonna continue with those, they made a big difference in the spring. And regular meetings, trying to make that department, just professionalize it a little bit. Baby steps, we're balancing sort of keeping employees and professionalizing and finding that balance, but we are making surely small baby steps in the right direction. That's the end.
Thank you, Carrie, very much. There's a lot there.
Yep.
I think that we can certainly continue to digest this, and if something pops up, I think Carrie would entertain questions as well. Is there anything else anyone wants to talk about? There, before we move on. Seeing none. I think we've done a pretty good job with our agenda tonight. I think we're at the end. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. It's Bree, then Kyle. All those in favor? Very good. 8:52.